So grateful to have this event program with Lisa Baudoin, and she is going to say a few words about what's going on with her and also introduce today's author. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thank you all for coming. And I am thrilled to introduce Larry Watson. He is the author of 11 novels, including Let Him Go, which was just made into a movie with Kevin Costner, and The Lives of Edie Pritchard, which is what we'll talk about today, and was one of my favorite books from 2020. He has a book of poetry out, which we haven't really talked much about, but maybe we will today, and writes reviews and essays for many different publications. He grew up in North Dakota. He studied in Utah and eventually settled in Wisconsin, teaching at the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point, and is a visiting professor at Marquette University. He lives and reads and writes in Kenosha. And welcome, Larry, to Oconomowaukee. And I guess we will maybe have you read a little bit from Edie Pritchard.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Thanks for that nice introduction. Good to see you both.
Yes.
I'm going to read from the first section of the novel. It's toward the end. Edie Pritchard has she's sort of become disgusted with her husband, and especially her husband's unhealthy attachment. That's the way she thinks of it, to his twin brother. Thinks that he's always going to be troubled as long as he's in his brother's company. So Edie has taken off. She bought a bus ticket. She didn't care where she was going. She just got on the first bus heading out. Edie has been on the bus less than an hour, and its easy bounce and sway are already transporting her toward sleep. Looping the strap around her wrist, she tucks her purse close to her side and away from the aisle, then closes her eyes. But in another moment, she's jarred back to consciousness. A large woman in a man's wool overcoat is lurching up the aisle toward the front of the bus. She's waving her arms and yelling, "Wait, stop, we have to stop." When she reaches the driver, she bends down to tell him something. Edie can't hear what the man says, but the driver extends an arm in an attempt to calm her and move her back toward her seat. His effort is in vain, however. She continues to hover near him and to plead her case. In another moment, the bus slows and the driver steers the vehicle to the side of the road. The vehicle leans, totters, and finally stops, half on the blacktop and half on the crumbling shoulder. The driver shuts off the engine and pulls on the emergency brake. He stands and turns to face the bus passengers. "Folks, we have a little situation. This lady has forgotten her medication in her luggage, and it's medication she says she needs. So we'll dig out her suitcase, get her pills, and we'll be on our way again. Feel free to step out, and stretch your legs." Edie follows everyone off the bus. But while they gather near the driver as he opens the luggage department, she walks behind the bus and stands by herself on the cracked, frost-heaved blacktop. It might not seem like much, this country. A few bare hills, each seeming to rise out of the shadow of the one behind it. Miles of empty prairie, and all of it, hill and plain, the color of paper left out in the sun. You might be out here alone someday with what you thought would be your life, and a gust of wind might blow your heart open like a screen door and slam it just as fast. Or as I said, that's the end of the first section, the first of the three parts of the novel.
And whoops, am I on? You can hear me, right? Yes. Daniel's turned off my, there we go. We're back on.
We're back.
We're back. I had to sneak away because my cat is so loud and I forgot that he was going to be wanting to go outside. So Daniel, we're a little discombobulated, aren't we?
Well, this is because it's our summer reading special and it's our first time doing something like this.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, we're working it out as it goes. So we talked about a number of things. One of your book and your career. Now, of course, you have set your books in a number of different places, including once in Wisconsin. But Montana has been, I'm sure you've counted it up, are more books set in Montana than anywhere else?
I'm not sure. I think Montana and North Dakota might
North
be
Dakota.
neck and neck.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll
And
do,
of course, Edie goes back and forth across borders to.
I'm
Yeah.
calling her, this was Montana novel,
Okay.
because I can't really think of too many other North Dakota novelists. And I had all, whereas Montana is like, well, too many other. I said other. Oh, you have them all. You're going to tell us, we'll have a special North Dakota corner.
Okay.
But we did, I was saying that I made a little, here, let everybody share. And we did make this nice little, I don't know, can we see that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
so we had
yeah.
a nice little Montana table that has been selling some books off of it too. I'm gonna let that go away as it moves around the store. What do you think? Would you talk a little about place and how it affects your writing, maybe? Just because your books are so placey and you have such strong connections to the places that you're writing about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they are placey. I mean, I place I put a lot of importance on setting in place, but also in time. So I have a lot of fiction set sort of mid 20th century. Part of the reason that I've set novels in that part of the world is that I've set a previous fiction there. And once you create that community, you might as well just keep going back to it because you've already done the work. You know where the Dairy Queen is, you know where the Red Owl is, you know who the prominent families are in town. And it's also a part of the world with lots of small towns that are isolated, distant from other communities, and certainly distant from major population centers. And I kind of like that isolation. It makes people depend upon each other, even though they pride themselves on their self-reliance. It's a part of the world where weather is so important. People are talking about the weather all the time, but it's not just making small talk. I mean, it's sometimes a life or death matter. And Montana and North Dakota and Wisconsin also work for something else that I've said that I write. That I don't write Westerns, that I write Northerns. Yeah. And of course, there is no such thing as a Northern, but still that northern tier of states up around the Canadian border is it's familiar territory for me.
It's funny you call them Northerns, yeah, because I sat there thinking about how we could refer to it, because they're plains, but it's not just the plain states, and it's not just the mountain and plains, it's not the Midwest, but they are the northern states.
Yeah, and Lisa and I know you do too. We do very well with not just Wisconsin books, but Minnesota books and rural, small town Michigan books especially.
Yep, I even have a little Vermont in a novel too. So yeah, sticking to that latitude.
The maple makers, the maple syrup, maples. Yeah. Lisa, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I was thinking about the landscape too, and how it defines the characters of the people too, just the interior characters with that vast openness and the rugged, the weather defining how things work, and the landscape defining how things work, and the parameters that puts on how you then create a life within that. And your stories are structured in that sort of way, and your characters too. And it's very familiar territory.
Yeah. The other thing that those distances from place to place provide is lots of car time. I mean, and I like getting characters in cars because they're going to have conversations that might turn sort of intimate, because after all, you're in that close space for sometimes hours, and you can only talk about the weather and the landscape for so long.
Well, and in a New York novel, everything is so close, so you you already have that closeness. When you're in the bigger, vast spaces, you need to create that closeness for the
That's very good.
characters. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're not road trip novels per se,
Mhm.
but they have a road trip aspect to them.
A trip,
Yes.
yeah, a road aspect to them.
One of the things that Lisa and I just love, Edie, just one of your best creations. And what inspired you to write her? We also were talking about the origins of the book, and I know you may have talked about this in our previous events, but we said we would do a couple of do-over questions if we really liked the answers. So,
Okay. What?
Like the origins of the story of how the novel came together, and also your inspiration for Edie.
Yeah. If you like the questions, I should give the same answer then, shouldn't I?
We'll tape them again.
Oh, you can
Actually,
switch
it'd be much more
Well,
interesting if you had a completely different answer. You know, I've thought about this for a year. I was completely wrong.
So I'll one of the things I have to mention about Edie is twins. You know, there are literal twins in the novel, the Linderman brothers. And when I started writing the novel, my notion of it would be that it was going to be about that the twins would be center stage. And my working title was Edie and the Linderman twins. But before too long, Edie just became such an interesting character, such a vivid character, that she sort of came to the fore. And also there just seemed to be more and more of her story. I didn't set out writing the three-part novel. I thought that that the first section would be the novel, and then I finished it and I realized that there'd be more to it. And I had a conversation with my agent, and he said, "Well, sure, go ahead. You know, he said this might be epic," and it was not. It was a bad word. It was a bad word for me to hear, because I think I thought I needed to make it big, and I just don't know how to make novels big. My sort of structural standard is the scene, you know, but I began to think about how can I tell a big story but still with individual scenes, and so I came to that three-part structure, each section 20 years apart, but scenes that I hoped would be representative in each of those sections, and eventually put together would sort of say, speak to the totality of Edie's life. And twins, you know, I've always sort of done a tip of the hat to twins in my fiction because there are so many twins in our family on my mother's side. And this time I decided I'd do more than just nod to twins and have twins as characters.
So like a doctoral dissertation could be in the future for some grad student, twins in the work of Larry Watson.
Well, it's too broad for a doctoral dissertation, but yes, you can. Yeah. Twinning aspects in Larry Watson's novel, and as I said earlier, there are literal twins, but in the three parts there are sort of twinning aspects. So they sort of look at each other, and incidents and characters mirror those in other areas.
Would you be okay mentioning one of them, like one of the?
Sure. So there are the twin brothers in the first section, but there's also another set of brothers in that first section. There are some brothers in the second section, although sort of minor characters, and then a couple of important characters in the third sections, the sort of outlaw brothers who come visiting.
Yeah.
And then the granddaughter, like Edie's granddaughter, and Edie's granddaughter, or her daughter. Yeah, there's a lot of mirroring sort of effects there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with Edie being such a strong female character, I was thinking back to just other examples of strong females in writing, and specifically if we're thinking that northern tier of states. of who is up in that space, but also in general. And I always, my first thought when I started reading Edie Pritchard, I kept thinking of, and this is odd because it's a nonfiction book, but Terry Tempest Williams' Refuge, where she's looking at her mom and her grandmother and the legacy of growing up in Utah, and then their strength in just their regular lives of having to deal in and out of these worlds and how strong they were. And that kind of, the way you set it up with Edie and moving in with her daughter and then the granddaughter, moving those stories along, it made me think of that too, of just how our families, our environment don't define who we are, but they create the parameters in which we make a life. So do you know what I mean?
I do know.
I was just thinking of other books that do the same thing.
Sure, and yeah, and I like the notion of these strong female characters and families, because I think they are frequently the person who holds the family together, even though they might not seem like the strongest characters or something like that. So I mentioned before, Joyce Carol Oates has a couple of novels in which the family is fraying and unraveling. I'm thinking of We Were the Mulvaneys, for example. And finally, that family survives because of the strength of the mother. The dad just completely goes off the rails. I think you see these strong women who are maybe initially not recognized for their strength or something like that, who when matters become critical, reveal a strength that people often might not know they had. And I think that is true of Edie. When she gets the call, she answers.
Yeah.
Lisa and I have to mention a book that both Lisa and I really loved this spring called The Five Wounds by Kirsten Valdez Quaid, because the matriarch in that book, Yolanda, is completely holding the family together, with the twist being that she's dying. But have you looked at that book at all?
It's good.
Oh, good.
Okay. Yeah, I think you would like it, Larry.
Okay.
Yeah. Really strong sense of place.
It's set in New Mexico, and it's really picks up that unique character of New Mexico, northern New Mexico.
And for viewers who don't know, Lisa is from New Mexico.
So I can,
You can
I'll
vouch
vouch for it.
And
But it's surprising. Well, it's surprising too, because Yolanda, the mother's holding it together, but it's the daughter that ends up being the strength of the entire story. Yeah, she's the one that holds it all together.
Well, the mom can't do, and as the mom deteriorates, she can't. But she's sort of it passes on. Kind of skips the guy in the middle.
Well, to get back to an earlier novel of mine, As Good as Gone, also has some strong female characters, but again has a teenager who steps up and sort of is willing to save the family, or try to save the family, and sacrifice herself in the process because she feels the family is endangered. Which reminds me of another Joyce Carol Oates story that, what is it? Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? It was also made into a movie. Really a powerful story. Yeah.
Hey, you had a book made into a movie. So how's it? And got wonderful, terrific reviews. Talk a little. Well, first of all, has there been interest in any of your other books? Because my feeling is if you like one of them, you're going to probably like them all. And also, you were mentioning your experience as the movie opens in other countries, what you've been doing. So talk a little about that.
Sure. You're right. Let 'Em Go came out late in 2020, and it did get some very nice reviews, and deservedly so. I thought it was just a terrific film. A very strange time for movies to be released when people weren't going to theaters, but like a lot of workarounds, it kind of happen. You know, we're doing one right here, you know. Yes, and now the movie is going to be released in Italy, I think maybe next week.
In July.
And the novel is being released this week as well. And so reviews are coming out over there, and I can't read a word of them, but it's it's a nice feeling. I've had other books that have been optioned over the years, and some of them, especially Montana 1948, have come very close, but none of them have gotten made. And so I was really pleased when Let Him Go, when that happened.
And you have a cameo in it, don't you?
Really, you'll have to look very, very fast, but maybe if you're watching on DVD, maybe you can freeze it or something like that. So yes, in the fancy restaurant scene, over Kevin Costner's shoulder, you will see my wife and me. We are, we're in the scene.
You understand how important it is to get even the smallest role in a film, because once you're in a film, then you can play the Kevin Bacon game and find out how many degrees of separation you have with him. But if you're not in a film, you can't do it. So I assume you've actually, if you were in a film with Kevin Costner, my guess is you've got a pretty low Kevin Bacon number. Congrats.
It could be. I thought you were going to say that other film offers would be coming our way.
Oh, and that
so
too.
So far, nothing.
You'll be the Hitchcock. You know, you'll be in all of your film adaptations. We wanted to talk a little about some of your favorite Montana writers, and we came up with a few as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Just before we started here, I mentioned having met James Welch years ago when I was an undergraduate at the University of North Dakota. And I'm a big fan of his work. Probably my favorite Montana writer, contemporary writer, is Tom McGuane. And I like his short stories especially. He came out just within the last few years with a collected story, a collection called Cloudbursts that I think is just wonderful.
We have a copy in stock. We were so shocked. I was so excited.
And
it inspired me to pull it off the shelf last night and just sort of get another flavor of it, because he's one of my family's favorite, my dad, my mom, me, and now my sons. So it's nice. And his stories are fantastic.
Larry, if you were going to have someone read one of the James Welch books, what would you have them start with?
I don't know. Would I say Winter in the Blood? I might. Yeah.
I said I've only read Indian Lawyer, so that's the only one I can recommend. But my guess is Fool's Crow and Winter in the Blood are the two. That's if you want to read three, and since we're talking, this is a triptych, you know, then you should read all three of them. And we have to come up with two other Thomas McGuane books, but we'll do that later.
Oh, that's easy.
And didn't somebody said that Norman Maclean's A River Runs Through It it's an anniversary year for that book. I love that novel.
It's 45 years since it's been published.
Amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was possible.
Somebody should grab, you said that you just really loved the closing paragraph. Is it terrible to read the ending? I can go get it, but because I do have all these customers who read the endings first. Plus it's not a mystery, so you won't find out.
It just has a beautiful ending. And in the movie, which is a flawed, I think, but definitely watchable.
Not as good as Let Him Go.
That final section is read on the screen. You know, it's a voiceover, and I believe Robert Redford reads it and does a damn fine job.
No, he was a good one. Well, anyway, everybody should then go to a bookstore and just say, "Can I get your copy of River Runs Through It? Because I just need to read the ending." I'll get them in the stores. So we have a strategy here.
So we need one more Montana writer if we're going to do things in threes.
Oh yeah, you know, I'm going to throw out another one I bet who doesn't get read much anymore, and that's A.B. Guthrie.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is there a particular book that you would recommend from A.B. Guthrie?
Yeah, but I can't think of it right now. The Way West, is that his?
we'll look it up.
Maybe, yeah. You can, yeah. And some of his books have been made into movies, and A.B. Guthrie himself wrote for the screen. I think he did the screenplay for Shane.
Oh,
I just lost what is that website that I was going to send to everybody about
for the
that-
literary map.
literary map? Yeah. Because the thing, your A.B. Guthrie, by the way, is pretty close to you. So something for you to know. Well, I would say, there is a weird, there is the weirdness of the Milwaukee, Montana connection. One of our good customers teaches in Montana right now, not in Missoula, but
Postman?
I can't remember. Tiny, very, very Chinese. 10 people in the school. No, it's bigger than that. But there's Pete Fromm is from Milwaukee, and he I did actually read that he has won a record-breaking number of awards from the Pacific Mountain Booksellers Award, Pacific Northwest Booksellers Award. And then I thought of another person from Milwaukee who wound up in Montana, a woman, and I actually went to her event when she wrote the book 20 years ago, Claire Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Winter Range. So I don't remember too much lately, but I read that book. So, and I guess Fromm's written a lot of books, but I think the most popular one is Indian Creek Chronicles. I think that's what.
You have the advantage over me because you can remember book titles and authors, and I can't anymore.
Or I could type them up. There is that possibility that I have no memory at all. So,
extensive notes.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm going to send everybody the Larry Watson literature link so they can know. Yeah, there's A.B. Guthrie, pretty close. There, like I said, there were some wonderful writers nearby, like Ivan Dogue, John Hassler, who's I think best known as a Minnesota writer, Faith Sullivan, Kent Nelson, who I didn't know, and then the brothers Leif and Lynn Enger. And I mentioned that your writing is very connected to Leif and Lynn Enger's, and then a little less connected to the Leif Enger that spells his name Lief, which made me call into question the entire literature map. But here's the link here on that. And then you mentioned to me that you had actually recommended Lynn Enger's American Gospel. And I went on Fantastic Fiction, and there is this lovely review of American Gospel from you. It's a book that I feel like while I've read the Leif Engers, I haven't read this, and I feel like maybe I have to. Do you have any words to say about how good it is?
Well, yeah, I thought that book would get more attention. I mean, it just seemed to touch a lot of things going on in contemporary society. A charismatic religious figure, somebody who makes a prediction about an apocalyptic event that some people believe, and yeah, it's a good read. It's a good read.
Of the novels, we were going to swing back around with McGuane. Are there any of his novels you would recommend for summer reading? I remember sitting in baby pools and reading. I mean, just because we didn't have a real pool, we sat in a little pool and read McGuane as a college student. So it's a good summer read.
Well, of the McGuane novels, it would be the Montana novels, even though he had a really big early success with, I think, a novel set in Key West or something. Gallatin Canyon, is that a novel? I think
those are stories too. Yeah. Nothing But Blue Skies.
Yeah.
That I think was a good one.
Yeah.
Did you read any?
I can sure think of a lot of titles once you mention them yourself.
That's what she's here for.
What
can
about,
call out a bunch of books.
Did you read any Rick Bass? Because I always think of Rick Bass in Montana too.
And you're right to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Good.
think that he's more of a quieter one, I guess, too.
And again, I think better known as a short story writer.
Yeah.
I wish I knew his work better.
Yeah. His short stories are great.
We did really well years ago with his book about his dog.
Yeah.
Coulter. And then I read that collected short stories of Rick Bass. It won the Story Prize, and I was
The Watch.
No, it's actually like, it really is a collected short stories. It's called, I don't really know what it's called, but it was like an anthology of his work.
Ah.
You can find it, I'm sure, maybe not. So
Yeah.
No,
no,
I just have novels here.
don't worry. I saw on Fantastic Fiction, I was thinking of another category of books that we sell in the store, which are called What to Read After You Read All of Larry Watson's books. And I saw that you recommended Godspeed, Nick Butler's new book, which is coming out in just a few weeks. And it's set not in Wisconsin, it's set in
No, it has I think Colorado mountain setting, and it is a thrill ride of a novel, let me tell you. Yeah.
I will tell you that our Larry Watson, Tim, who I also call the What to Read After Larry Watson reader, he reads a lot of Minnesota books, he loved it, but he said it's a really tough book. There's some violent scenes in it, which you have some violent scenes too. But I have to say, I haven't made my way through it yet because I just hit one of the scenes and I'm like, well, I can't do it. So, but there is.
That's when you skim.
Yeah, you think that's
and then you see everyone's okay, and then you go back and read it again.
Lisa, I need your coaching to get through these things.
Yeah.
So, but you say it's one of one.
We'll talk you through. We'll talk you through.
Okay, thank you. Is it your favorite of his, or what would you say?
I liked, my favorite is still Shotgun Love Songs.
What a book. What a book. That was so cool. That was one where we got like 7 people. I'm just like, I don't even know how to get 7 people in my store to read a book now, but we did, and it was, so much fun to sell. And so felt, just because of the tone of the book, it was so a little different than everything else that was out there. So,
And we often don't get that kind of male friendship in that book really kind of captured that.
Exactly.
And it was a tender male friendship, just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Larry,
tender male friendship based in jealousy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, some with female friendships have some jealousy too.
Just a bit, do you think?
I don't think it's gender specific. Hey, Larry, did you read Raft of Stars by Andrew Graff?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's a good. He's doing our Butler event is with the two, Graff interviewing him, and because that's been one of our big books for summer, and it feels like something you might enjoy. So
yeah,
I've had a lot of customers come back and tell me how much they like it. So, and it's set in the Wisconsin Northwoods. So about 2 kids who run away and the authorities chasing after them. They think they've killed one of the stepdads.
Is that real common for booksellers that your customers come back and say, yeah, it really worked for me?
Oh yeah, well I ask a lot, but yeah, they do love to tell us. I mean, honestly, if I had a case of customer recs, several of my customers would be thrilled. But others it would be. But yeah, it is. And I have to tell you, it's one of the most. Lisa can vouch for this. It's like one of the most rewarding things about being a bookseller is when you recommend something and they're like, this was great. And people do want to tell you about the books they read. Another success that Lisa and I had this year started with a customer telling me to read something. It was Leonard and Humphrey by Ronan Hession. And it's about 2 Irish friends in their 30s. And they're very quiet and they are, one needs a job and one wants a girlfriend, and that's the plot. And it's sort of told episodically, and it's very funny, and it's really interesting and smart and philosophical. And we've both been hand selling it, and that all started with one and then a second customer telling me to read it. It's really fun.
They're telling me to read it.
Yes, that's right. And then I told you to read it, and then I told Sue Boucher and Cottage to read it. And, yeah, and I hoped it would go further. It's hitting our bestseller list still, but it has not exploded, despite a lot of booksellers around the country liking it. I haven't hit the right person. At one point, one of my friends knows the book club buyer at Target, and she had asked my friend what she was reading, and she said, "Leonard and Hungry Paul," and she said, "Tell me more about that," but it didn't happen.
Well, it's hitting our book clubs. We've got book clubs reading it, and it's a really nice summer read. It makes you feel good at the end. It's just quiet, novel. Feel
good without being schlocky.
Yes.
Yeah. It doesn't have it's spare enough that it doesn't feel schlocky.
Well, earlier we both mentioned a writer we like, Kathleen Schlein.
Yeah.
Kathleen Schlein, and her books, I think, make you feel good, and not in a schlocky, sentimental
so
way,
smart.
It's a kind of world view or something like that. I think they're just wonderful.
I love them too, and we got to have her for like 3 books ago, and the one that's set in 1960s New York that had the terrible cover, but I really like
a really long title.
No, there's 3 Weissmans of Westport, which was her only big bestseller, and then we did really well with the Grammarians, her last book.
Which is fantastic.
And it's a twin novel.
Oh,
Twins.
Was it They Don't Mean To, But They Do?
Oh, right. We did really well with that one too. That's her kind of Roz Chast novel, I call it.
Yeah.
Because it came out around the same time about caregiving. And do you have a favorite?
It might be The New Yorkers.
Oh, I went back. I used to say, funny story about the New Yorkers. I hand sold that book like crazy. And then somebody finally said, because we always did well with dog books, and that dog on the cover of the book is so in your face. And I had this rule about dog novels: the dog has to stare at you straight ahead. And then finally somebody said, "Gosh, you really love the New Yorkers." I'm like, I didn't read it. So I finally, when I started falling in love with her other books, I wound up reading that one too. And I loved it also, though I will say I have a place in my heart for, it's Finn and Lady is the one I was thinking of. And I just really love that book. And it was not, I don't think it did as well as some of her others. I mean, we had an event, so it did okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever read her, Lisa?
I haven't. I started Grammarians, and of course I had to stop and read something else. So it's actually still sitting on my stand to read. So
the one thing I would say about it, Larry, is that I would say Grammarians has a Laurie Colwin-esque atmosphere, feel to it more than some of our others. And Laurie Colwin then connects to Katherine Heine, who Lisa and I both.
And I just finished reading Happy All the Time by Laurie Colwin, and I adore it. It was so smart and funny, and I didn't want to leave that little happy universe.
Yeah.
Happy All the Time is the book I connected Grammarians.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. And
I want to start it over again.
I read it twice.
You can do that. Dog novels. How about Sigrid Nunez's, is it The Friend?
Yeah, The Friend. Yeah, that's a terrific book. So quiet, but wonderful. I guess it won the National Book Award, so I guess other people feel that way too. But it's a wonderful friendship book, and it's also, it's a sad, introspective book about this guy's life as well. But mostly through
and the dog is really a dog. I mean, I like it when the animals are really animals, and yet they still have some character without the.
Oh, so we're not going to talk about all those dog books where like the dog is in the center of the book telling the story. We won't mention those.
Okay.
Well, and I think of the dog in Petrie's The Drifter, that everyone just loved the dog in that book.
That's right.
Oh,
And
yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
and he left the dog out of the second book, and they're like, where's the dog?
The dog's in the new book? Is it the dog was in the last book?
The dog is probably, the last book's in Milwaukee, so I think the dog's in
The dog is in that
I
one.
mean, I
yeah.
read them all, but it's a year. The next book, I'm already thinking about Nebraska, where the next book is set.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Should
We
have
have
been North Dakota.
We should have, or Montana. So we both, Lisa and I both read Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, which is set in Montana. Like, people don't really, this is sort of our category of books people don't know are Montana novels, but she wound up it's about a woman aviator and then a contemporary story in Los Angeles about the actor who's going to play her in the role. And she wound up originally setting the book in Nebraska and moved it to Montana because there was just nothing to say about Nebraska. I don't really know.
Well, no, and this is what I wondered too about setting stuff in Montana. There's I don't know if it's a real thing or if it's just our mythology of Montana, but this book couldn't have been set in Nebraska because this woman would never have had this girl would never have had the same sort of experiences in Nebraska, which would have led her to be a pilot in the way that she was a pilot, which was not the record-setting pilot that she was.
There's also the problem that state borders don't always coincide with what the region actually is. So yes. Nebraska is the West, but it just doesn't resonate like that. You know, Western North Dakota is the West, but it's not the West the way Montana is the West. You know, I mean, there's just no question in people's minds about when you say Montana. Oh yeah, sure. I mean, they get it wrong, but they think mountains.
They have that vision. They have the vision.
Yes.
I will say something about Nebraska. So I just read Richard Marx's memoir because we're co-sponsoring somebody's event for his memoir, and we're part of that too. And his biggest international hit was this song called Hazard, which was also his last top 10 here. And he said it in Nebraska because he didn't set it in Nebraska when he wrote the song, and wherever he said it didn't work in terms of the rhythm, so he had to come up with a state. So that's what Nebraska has going for it. It's melodic.
Somebody I think I wrote a blurb for this book, and now I can't remember the title, but it's set in Nebraska. It's published by Farrar Straus Giroux. It's a woman's first novel, and it's sort of Midwestern noir. Farrar Straus Giroux, and it's
recently?
Very recently.
Oh. So
recent, I really am embarrassed not to be remembering.
Well, we should know right away like this too.
Well, right, and I'm not the buyer, so I don't see everything that comes out. I would say, is it Willa Cather-esque?
No,
not because if it's noir, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we'll find out real soon.
What I'm going to do is everyone who's on this, we're going to take notes on all the books with some links, and then we're able to send these when this camp video is done. We've been trying to get them out within a week so that we can actually use the Zoom. So everyone who subscribed will get that, and we'll also send a list of the books we're talking about.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah, great idea.
You mentioned a few other authors. Congratulations. You mentioned The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich, a Minnesota writer who mostly writes about Minnesota, who just won the Pulitzer Prize for Night Watchman.
She lives in Minnesota, but she's a North Dakota.
Yeah, North Dakota. All right. Yeah, that's right. I have to forget that. Fair enough. So that would be in the North Dakota Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and she's there. Another favorite North Dakota writer of mine. He's sort of, people have lost track of him in his books, is Larry Wywoody. He's just a terrific writer, and his novel Beyond the Bedroom Wall is a great novel.
And it's not in print.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very sad.
And that's,
I know Grey Wolf reissued it a few years back, but I think that one's out of print as
Wow, a
well.
Grey Wolf author going out of print,
Yeah,
because they usually keep things a little.
he wasn't originally a Grey Wolf author. They
Right.
they were sort of doing a Deserve to be Rediscovered series or something like that, and did that book. But yeah, if you can get your hands on Beyond the Bedroom Wall, it's a beautiful novel. I was
So
really
Daniel-
happy to see The Night Watchman win a Pulitzer Prize. That's a wonderful novel, and who can do what she does, which is to build that world that is so rich and detailed, yeah, she's just amazing.
Yeah, it's quite the body of work. So
yeah. And who else with North Dakota? Oh,
we'll work on that too if we come up. I worked so hard on it. We worked so hard on a Montana. One author you have who is part of the Wisconsin body of work in terms of setting. You mentioned you really enjoyed Humboldt Elegies.
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, I'm a little suspicious of the auto fiction category. I'm not sure why, but I just thought that was a wonderful book. I couldn't believe how much he got into that book. Yeah. It
was amazing, and it was kind of audacious. Just like the things he was, the book in some ways was like a big dare to like lots of people. And I was surprised it didn't get more kind of like stirring up, and also I was hoping when the post came out, I thought, oh, it'd be nice if he was a finalist though.
Yeah.
It was nice to see the finalists who did, it's that weird thing about the Pulitzer where they don't do the finalists ahead of time and they only do 2. And so they don't really get the, so it's sort of like, you get this, but you don't really get anything,
So. His father was just one of the most vivid, compelling characters that I've read about in a long time. Now, the fact that he probably just is his father and not just a literary creation, that seems beside the point to me. He came so alive.
Well, he said, if you've ever, I would highly recommend watching the Fresh Air interview or listening to the Fresh Air interview, because he's, the interviewer was also having trouble with autofiction and really read the book as more true than it was. And, and that's not really his father, that's not in so many ways. And, I kind of like the autofiction. I guess I read a lot of it, but I don't, I think everybody should write an autofiction novel. Larry, do you think you could write an autofiction novel? It sounds like you don't want to.
No, I couldn't. I couldn't. I like to make up stuff, although that doesn't stop plenty of
right. That's the beauty of it. You can make up everything.
Yeah, yeah.
It just has to be you. Yeah. So, Lisa,
and 100 years from now, it won't matter at all.
Actually, we'll read all these our descendants will read all these autofiction novels and think they're memoirs. They'll get misshelved.
Yeah, yeah.
So
because we did chat a little bit, our email back and forth before we did this event. You talked about your rereading project, and we're talking about books being reissued and books coming out of print, and how important it is to share, one, to reread, but to remember the older novels and to talk about them still. So what are you loving to reread right now? I know you had mentioned Ragtime.
Yeah, I did go back and reread Ragtime. I mentioned in an email that E.L. Doctorow was my teacher for a term at the University of Utah, and it was just when Ragtime was coming out. So he was sort of flying back and forth to New York, but I heard him read from it, and I read the novel when it first came out. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was not the great American novel, but a great American novel. And this, recently I reread it. It's every bit as good as I remembered it.
Did you see the Milwaukee rep production of it. Was that the
I
rep?
didn't.
Who was it? It was, oh goodness, now I'm going to get in trouble because it's like there was some production here, but I don't remember what, but I read it for whatever was here. So it could have been anything. It could have been the opera. It wasn't the ballet. So Lisa, do you know, you're very artsy.
I don't.
Broadway
I don't
show.
have a memory this
Oh,
year.
she thinks it's Gretchen Lindstrom says, I think it was the Broadway show.
Yeah.
Good
yeah.
enough for me. Just so I don't have to think about
Yeah.
it anymore. Lisa, have you been rereading anything? I have a rule.
No.
Now, I have to read a book, and I know this doesn't I'm like classic. It has to be 3 years old, one a month, because 3 years old is just old enough that I'm not doing it for work.
Right.
Hmm.
But that's not rereading. That's just reading something that you missed the
Oh.
first time around, right?
Sometimes I have, well, yes, that's true. So rereading is a
Yeah.
different thing, but I do
Yeah.
feel like going, as booksellers, we just don't go back enough in general.
I know, I'm looking forward to being able to do that. There's some books that I wish I could read like I did for the very first time, because there was that magic and excitement to do that, but I don't. And
Well,
I mean,
they just did that, Laurie Colwin, and I love, they just reissued all the books with jackets, and from 2 different publishers, because some are at Harper and some are at Vintage, and you just never see that. You know, we were, this book, Midnight Library, has become this phenomenon. And I've been trying to, you know, he's at 3 different publishers, and I've been like saying to the publishers, why don't you, you know, this book doesn't sell. There's actually a theme that runs through all of them. Some of them are, one of them was like $25, non-returnable. Like, why don't you come out with a package that mimics the new book? And it used to be so common, but I think because of ebooks, the publishers are like,
or COVID.
No, I feel like this was before COVID too. This has been a problem.
I was just
It wasn't
surprised.
a lot, but not too many other.
I was surprised with the Laurie Coleman with the Happy All the Time. It was published in 1978. That's a long, I mean, that's 40 years ago.
Yeah, well, she died
And
in
it's-
92, so it has to be 30. You know.
Well, it was very contemporary. I mean, it read really well for right now.
Yeah.
And we need to remember that, things that aren't necessarily classics can still ring true.
Yeah. There's
Human nature is cyclical.
Another book that I reread that I thought everyone would be reading during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Was
Yeah.
Philip Roth's Nemesis about the polio epidemic, and that novel is so poignant, and it has to do with not just the victims of the disease, but the people who are spreading it, and how it devastates them as well. And it's got another great closing passage. Yeah.
Yeah, that I think is probably one that we need to be pushing and suggesting and bringing forward again. Yeah.
You mentioned that you also read Light Years every year.
Every year. Yeah.
That's
I don't even like to recommend it anymore, because people, I've recommended it and I even taught it one year, and they kind of come back and say, yeah, thanks for the recommendation. But
why do you think it resonates with you more than it does with
I don't know. I don't
crazy people who
particularly-
don't understand how amazing the book is?
It doesn't have to do with the characters. It doesn't necessarily, it has to do with the prose. It has to do with the style. I mean, you know that some writers, their writing, their style, it just evokes something in you. I mean, that the magic works. And sometimes you admire the style, you say, yeah, that's good. And sometimes you say, yep, that really works for me. And Salter's style in Light Years really works for me. Yeah.
It's that thing that just sort of grabs you. It just like makes you be in that place. It just like changes. Yeah. Warlight by Ondaatje does that for me. I mean, when I read that, it was just like, and it's just the way it felt.
Yeah.
How many times have you read that, Lisa?
Only once.
Oh, we have to go back.
I should.
Yeah.
I hardly ever reread anything, but I will say that one of my favorite books that I reread that I will probably read a third time is The Golden Gate by Vikram Seth. So it is also the only book of poetry that I read. I mean, it's a novel. It doesn't feel like poetry.
Yeah.
I just
It's
I was gonna say, I read poetry all the time. That doesn't count.
no, it's a novel.
it's a novel in verse. Yeah.
In verse.
Yeah. And it's huge, isn't it? I mean,
No, that's A Suitable Boy. I haven't reread.
oh,
that.
okay.
I only read that once. No, it's 200 pages. It's not.
Yeah. Thought I remembered a title for a second there, but nope.
Yeah. Good for you.
And see, we're not talking picture books because there's picture books I reread all the time, but that doesn't count to myself, not to my kids. They're too big.
Oh, okay. Now this is my chance to mention a picture book that we read to our kids that we loved, and that is Randall Jarrell's Animal Family, with I think Marie Sendek illustrations. Oh my God, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Those are the fun ones too. It's just like books really do have that individual magic for everybody, for each reader. And I'm glad when a customer will come in and say, you know, and it's the books that I love the most are always the hardest for me to hand sell to, Larry, because I'm afraid that someone's going to go, yeah, I don't really know why you like that at all. And then you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to recommend books to you, but it's nice to have that conversation because books have such a personality, and they also arrive in our lives at a time where we can either take them in or we can't take them in.
And the equivalent of that is teachers being reluctant to assign their favorite books because they'll just be so wounded when students don't like them.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, I feel your pain. Years and years ago, I mean, it was probably 30 years ago, I recommended a book to a customer and he came back and trashed it. And I just like, I feel like I'm still devastated by it.
Yeah.
And I don't even really remember why I like the book now, but
yeah.
It's bad.
But at least a teacher can still say, yeah, but you're still going to have to take the final exam.
Yeah, that's right. Very different relationship, a bookseller and their customer and a teacher and their pupil. So do we have anything that we missed, do you think, that any other books that you really love that you would like to get a word in edgewise on? Oh, you mentioned the Jane Smiley. We were talking about triptychs, and I was trying to find, you know, it's easier to find like 3 books, the Deptford trilogy and the Old Filth trilogy and the Gilead, no longer a trilogy because there's 4 of them. But you mentioned Jane Smiley's.
Yeah, and I don't know what the 3 books. Some Luck, Early Warning, and Golden Years. Is that
Golden Age? Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know what they call that trilogy. I don't know if they call it the Some Luck trilogy or something. But those 3 novels about the Iowa farm family, which goes into the future, by the way, a little ways into the future, and it's yeah. I just thought that book was great fun and yeah, terrific.
I think the other one that I thought was really interesting you recommended was The Lost by Middleton. And it really makes a lot of sense, even within how you write your stories of the family mythology and how stories change, and then the mysteries and the yearning and the uncovering. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
The Lost, I mean, it's history, it's Greek mythology, it's a detective story, it's a family history. That is, I've never read anything like that. It is.
I want to give your quote. My favorite read of recent years and the book I've recommended a lot.
Yeah.
So now we are sharing it with all of you.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. And I remembered the title too.
Yes. Well done. Are you? So we should ask you now. It's a year after we saw you. I assume you're working on your next book.
Yep.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
All right, got it. This is the way Larry Watson talks about his upcoming book. And
oh, I've given away too much. The
pressure.
You have. We could figure out a lot from that. So. I'm going to send. We sent a link to purchase if you haven't gotten Lives of Edie Pritchard yet. We have a link to purchase from either store. As I said, I'm going to try to get a list of the books we talked about, and And then don't forget, we have Mike Gale coming up in July, and we have Jennifer Chiavarini in August.
Yes.
And it's March. Still working on fall.
We've got one fall thing in place.
Right, but I don't think I'd call that readings from Oconomowaukee. So.
No, that's true. It's not.
Unless I haven't done the official confirmation.
And we should find out how we're going to do those, if we're going to keep doing Zoom wise.
I think we're going to
Take a
keep
vote.
one Zoom event a month
I think so too.
together. I think so. It's the best way to
That
get
sounds
these.
good.
Yeah. You like that?
Um,
You're going to join us too, Larry.
But what Lisa's referring to is we were working on our first event back at the Sharon Lynn Wilson Center in Brookfield. So we'll both be, I assume, transitioning into some in-store events and treading slowly.
And Larry, I'll find out the title of the Nebraska Noir book. I sent an email to our reps.
I'll find the title of that.
I keep checking the email to see if she's responded.
Okay,
But no.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. All right. But Lisa tells, oh no, that was fast.
That was fast.
That was really fast. All right, you got it.
It was. Tell me I didn't. Pickard County Atlas. Pickard County Atlas by Chris Harding Thornton.
Pickard County.
Nebraska setting, first novel, really stylistically innovative. Yep.
All right.
All right, I am going to send, it's coming, it came out in January, and Chris Harding Thomas, and I'm going to send that link out, and that I think will cover, actually, I'll send it out, I don't have to do that now, I will send that with all the other ones that we're doing. So let's see, and the answer is, for folks not reading the chat, Ragtime came through as a Broadway show and as a Milwaukee rep production.
All right.
So Ragtime takes it away. Thank you so much for joining us for our special edition. Congratulations on the paperback of the Lives of Edie Pritchard. Hope you figure out what's going on in that Italian interview that you're doing.
And have fun reading this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good time for it. Oh, it's
It
always
is.
a good time. Always a good
It
time.
is.
I can't think of a bad time. All right.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Bye.